she
No,
is
don't
over there.
start.
Gotta start the recording.
Do the silent roll call?
No, just wait, Tom.
All right. So stand for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, item number 1 said,
Yeah,
introduction. How you want to do this? Everyone introduce himself?
we already did all
We
that.
already did that.
No, I just think, you know,
We did that.
welcome everybody. I'm not introducing everybody, Ralph.
Okay.
I just wanted to welcome the new members and the reappointments. We had an incredible group of applicants, but I think we have a stunning Planning and Zoning Commission now. Even the mayor came up to me before tonight's meeting and said he thinks it's one of the best groups we've ever had. So I'm excited for a great few years with everybody.
Speaker doesn't work again.
What do you can't hear me?
No,
It is.
Just barely.
I can hear it.
Can you hear me? I'm
hear
speaking
you,
into.
But not because of the microphone.
Oh,
I can hear it.
I think it's working. Me.
There
I
you
just
go.
don't
That
want
was
to.
Yeah,
better.
you
That That was was better.
Fight it.
I don't want to swallow it.
Yeah, these darn things are a little sensitive.
All right. I'll
So,
move more closely to the microphone.
First item then was going to be for to appoint a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission to the seat of vice chairperson. So, we got
Are you looking for nominations?
looking for nominations.
Can you recognize me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I, Commissioner Burns, move to appoint Commissioner Mary Roberts to the seat of Planning and Zoning Commission Vice Chairperson.
Do I have a second?
Seconded by Commissioner Dillett.
The motion has been made in second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion carries.
Well, we're off to a good start.
So then,
Congrats.
Yeah.
I think somebody tried to cut off a nomination.
He's condolences.
Item number 2 is approval of planning and zoning minutes dated forever. So, any questions? There's only 3 of us on it, but any questions on dated October 17th and dated June 13th, 2022? There was another one in here too, wasn't there?
December.
There's 3.
There was 3, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of December 12th, 2022, October 17th, 2022, and June 13th, 2022.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Disapprove? Okay. Well then, item number 3 is discussion and possible action on request for case 20-18-MS.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Development Review Board. Just to formally move forward that this is case number 2018 MS. We're looking at an undeveloped lot on East Arroyo Road, which is in the Carefree Foothills subdivision. The applicant is Mr. Victor City. He is the architect as well, and he's representing the owners, Christopher Parks and Robin Lakian. To begin, and I'm going to kind of walk you through this one the first time around, and so it might be a little bit longer, but just to sort of explain each of the slides and how we go through this process. You'll see a lot of the slides basically are from your packets from each of the reports, but typically I just briefly kind of walk through this general information, then we'll get into potentially questions for me, questions for the applicant, and anything else that we need to discuss to move ahead. So first being, this is a vicinity map at the location. You can see where this property is. You can see it really, and it was a good suggestion. Next time I'll zoom out a little bit more so you have a better idea of where this really sits in Carefree. But it is the Carefree Foothills subdivision. It is off of Arroyo Road. There's actually an extension, which is a private driveway, which services the lot in question as well as the one to its north and then the developed lot to its south. It's adjacent to the Carefree Grandview Estates subdivision. We'll be looking at a case in Grandview Estates 2 next. But you can kind of get an idea. This is really, I would say, quintessential mountainside lot for us. Looking a little bit closer, I like to do some details just to give you some highlights of the property itself and some of the challenges. You can see off of Arroyo Road, the shared driveway, it's gated, allows access to the 3 lots. The lot in question, the thing that stands out the most, aside from having steep slopes, is that it has this beautiful and a significant rock outcropping. I'm sure many of you have seen it if you're driving on Carefree Highway or even Cave Creek Road. When we get into the project itself, you'll see how the architecture sort of is nestled within these rock outcroppings with very minimal disturbance. Again, private residence already exists to the south. Another thing to point out is that there is what we call an ingress and egress easement. Basically, that allows an adjacent property use to actually access the property if they need to. So that will be staying in place as we kind of continue through this discussion. Looking at the slope analysis really is all about trying to highlight where the steep slopes are to the less steep slopes and try to base our understanding of the proposal. One of the criteria we look for is what is the impact to the existing property and to topography, and trying to find the least impactful location on a site. In this case, and we run into this, we'll see this in the next case as well, is that many plats already have a defined building envelope. And they must have foreseen that in this case, although approved by the HOA, it's slightly been modified, the location of the house. It essentially falls both within the defined building envelope on the plat as well as the least impactful slopes on the property. But you can see, for the most part, the property is very steeply sloping. I think what's also important to point out here is you can sort of see the building outline and then those 2 rock outcroppings or boulder outcroppings. So we look at mountainside cases from 2 perspectives. One is specifically related to zoning and the development standards. Actually, they're both zoning standards, but these are the ones that are sort of the development standards that talk about, you know, how large the project can be, where it sits on the property. So, for example, the first thing is we look at lot coverage, and lot coverage is anything under a solid roof, whether it's whether it's habitable or non-habitable space. So it could be a patio cover, it could be a bed, you know, the house itself, it could be a garage. Anything under a solid roof is considered lot coverage. So in this regard, the lot coverage is 4.39%, so it complies with the allowed 13% for the zoning district. Then we look at disturbance area, and disturbance is anything that's been proposed on the lot, and it also includes, as I'll not in this case, if they were proposing any kind of septic system. It's any kind of disturbance. It's front and backyards, it's driveways, it could be walkways, and it's, of course, the structures themselves. In this case, 14.3% complies with the 39% allowed. Setbacks, again, these are basically zones where buildings cannot sit, and so it's 60 feet for the front and the rear of the property and 30 feet on the sides, so that's sort of perpendicular to each of those property boundaries. And once again, the house itself is, the house and the casita are located within the town's buildable area, we call it. Now, cumulative height is what we look at just specifically related to mountainside cases. And cumulative height is basically taking any built structure, and that could be a retaining wall, it could be the building wall, and you take it from the lowest, wherever there's a structure, the lowest point of natural grade, and you measure from the highest roof line or parapet. And the reason that we do that is because we're trying, and we limit that to 40 feet, because we're trying to eliminate that kind of solid look of wall, house, wall. So you are so it kind of tries to find kind of a sweet spot, let's say, on a property that, and then you have that 40 feet to work with. And of course, it's 40 feet. You need some, because of the nature of mountainside cases and the slope properties, there needs to be some understanding that, because the idea is for the homes to try to step down on the properties. to work with the grade and step down with the grade. So in this case, it's 33 feet for cumulative height where 40 feet is allowed. And then when we talk about building height, it's a little bit different in Mountainside than a standard lot in Carefree. We measure from finished grade and natural grade. And I hope that you saw some of those diagrams that kind of highlighted where natural grade follows for 24 feet or 16 feet for an accessory structure. And then finished grade is from the lowest finished floor to the highest roof line or parapet. So in this case, the main structure is 19.5 feet above finished grade, and at its highest 20.8 feet above natural grade, where we allow 24 feet in both instances. Now, when it relates to the casita, it's the same type of measurement, however, you're only allowed 16 feet maximum. So in this case, the casita was 11 feet above finished grade, but above natural grade, it's a little higher, 12.8 feet. With respect to grading and drainage, all the town's development standards have been met. Those are things such as there's no spill slopes or excessive cut slopes. There's no more cut than fill. The town engineer has looked at the development and ensuring that drainage correctly goes around or drains, the building drains properly but doesn't negatively impact neighboring properties. It doesn't change how it enters or leaves the property. And lastly, with utilities, Carefree Water Company, which is in transition, but I believe that this lot is online or close to being online for water service, and then Liberty Utilities will service the property. The owner will be required, however, I think the sewer ends at Arroyo, is that correct? So they will be putting in their own line to extend up to service the property. Now, specifically related to Development Review Board, we like to look at things about the environmentally sensitive features. Again, slopes that are greater than 20%, development related to rock features, retaining walls in this case are partly at the driveway. However, as you saw in some of the renderings, that the rear patios were containing fill, and they were terraced. And again, because we don't want to see kind of graded slopes, we like to see as tight of a building envelope as possible. And so those were evident in both of, in these three cases. And as you probably saw too, that there's some slight impact to the rock features. Again, it's sort of, it sits in the building envelope, but in a very minimal way. The design is Southwest modern architecture, which we see quite a bit now in Carefree, which seems to be in context and with and in quality, related to quality of design that we see. As we've spoke about before at our orientation meeting, we're not looking at the design necessarily. We're seeing how it fits into the landscape itself, but it's important to note, and also that the HOA has signed off on the design. That's really who manages what it looks like. And as you could see, they will be utilizing native landscaping for revegetation. And here quickly is just the landscape plan. You just sort of get the idea. What I think is really important about the landscape plan at this point is not only the list of plants that are being proposed, but you can kind of see how tight the building envelope is, and anything that's been disturbed that's not hardscape or building structure is landscaping. So again, with, is that door locked? Okay, we gotta figure that out. So here are some of the renderings that show each side of the home itself, or the architecture itself. You can see actually from the west, which I would say is the Cave Creek Road view, it actually is sort of shielded or buffered by the rock features themselves. But the other elevations you can see have a very kind of clean and low profile look to them. And then here's a couple more advantages so you can sort of see from different aspects, in particular sort of the bird's eye view and how it sort of sits in the landscape. So related to this, it is a public process. You saw that there was a citizen participation report included in your packets. One person did contact the applicant. It wasn't a resident or a property owner, but somebody who was building a home for adjacent property owner. So I think they had a positive review, as well as the HOA has reviewed, as I mentioned, and approved the project. So as you, in your report, there's conditions for approval. So when you're ready to make a motion or approve, those are the things that staff will be looking at once they submit for the building permit. So with that said, a little more long-winded than usual, I'm happy to answer any questions. Also, as I mentioned, the architect, Victor City, is here if you'd like to ask him some specific questions about the project.
I had one silly question
Okay?
on the L2 landscape plan sheet. Even using a magnifying glass so I could read everything.
Yeah, well, it's right.
And looking down a list of 49 different plants, and how quite well done they were done, numbered and whatnot was getting moved and what was staying. What I couldn't find was 15 and 16. Nowhere.
You mean, was that a salvage plant?
Huh?
Was that a salvage plant number that you're talking
Yeah, it was
about?
a plant that was gonna remain in place.
Okay. Well,
13, 14, 17, yeah, I couldn't find 15 and 16. Maybe I'm just blind.
I don't know about that, but we can definitely be sure that when,
Not a real serious thing, but everything else is so well done that, I said, why is this one missing?
okay, well, we'll make a note of that and be sure that we capture that at the
It's not
building
that
permit
important,
submittal.
which
No, it's important, but Victor might be able to answer that. Thank you.
Sure, and nice seeing some of you again and meeting those of you I hadn't previously. My name is Victor City, and I'm the architect for this project. And good question. I think that given the scale of the property, 15 and 16 were likely off of away, further afield than that L2
Oh, like on the
sheet. It was
opposite
on
side of the
yeah,
driveway.
yeah. And so it's the re-veg plan probably has. I'm sure it has that. But good question.
It was done so well, I thought, well, why is that one missing?
Yeah, well, we have to leave a little Easter egg there for you to find. So,
That's all
yeah.
I had.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm looking at A3, just the site plan, and if you go to the corner of the pool, there's a rectangle around there, which, yes, it's identified as the building envelope. And you see that the lower right-hand corner of the pool area is outside of the building envelope. Can you just explain that to me?
Absolutely, and great question. So Carefree Foothills, when it was originally platted, indicated areas within which the building could be. Outside of that envelope, you can have non-building related structures such as swimming pools, flat patios, those sorts of things. And so that's how the HOA determines or defines the boundary between one and the other. Yep.
Any other questions?
Okay, if you all are
It's a
ready to
beautiful home.
Great, thank you.
entertain a motion.
So go ask.
Uh-huh.
Do I have a draft to approve it
Including the conditions,
with the conditions?
I, Commissioner Mary Roberts, move to approve the number 2018.
Perfect, MS. Mhm.
Yes. Is there a second?
And I, Commissioner Sharon Smith, second the motion.
She beat you to it. You can both do a tie. All those in favor? Aye. Against? It's been passed.
Perfect. Perfect. Happy building, Victor.
Yeah, have fun climbing the hills.
Yeah, well, you'll see me again.
Yeah.
He's got to know that's true. All right.
I was able to get by that lot. Yeah, this will be exciting. All right, that takes us to item number 4, case number 21-17-MS. The applicant?
Okay, thank you. Again, this is another mountainside case that we'll be looking at. I won't go into as much detail and explanation as last time. The applicant and owner are husband and wife, Andre and Anna Arapatov. Is that right? Thank you. And they have also their architect, Jacques LeBlanc, as part of this process. They are looking to develop a lot in Carefree Grandview Estates to the subdivision on North 66th Place. You will see that, once again, even more so, this is a very traditional mountainside lot. Again, this is actually somewhat within the vicinity of the last project that we just reviewed, a little bit further to the east. And again, you know, it has sort of the same vantage point Carefree Highway is to its south. Adjacent subdivisions include Carefree Grandview Estates 1, as well as the Boulder Vista Estates, which is a little bit further north. Looking at a map, really the significance of this lot were steep slopes, and they definitely have a challenge and had a challenge to design a home on this property for sure. There are some scattered smaller boulders and things like that, and also some protected plants, but really this, as we'll look at and you probably saw in your packet, that the majority of the slopes were quite steep, excuse me. So here is a slope analysis, and in essence, the whole lot slopes more than 30%, except a small portion where, as you can see, the driveway is being proposed. This, again, as I mentioned, is similar to the last project that we just looked at, is that it has a defined building envelope. So the applicants are somewhat constrained to where the home can sit on the property. Looking through, I'm sorry,
Can you back
of
up?
course.
What is the black dashed line on that image?
Yeah, I think, is your civil engineer here? I think it's the drainage area, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of times, just so you know, a lot of times the slope analysis is created by the civil engineer, and I think this was just a graphic that was left on the slope analysis as part of the plan that they were doing the analysis for.
White dashed lines, or they just have nothing to do with?
The little white squares are the actual contour elevations. It's just quite small. It's just small based on what you're looking at. Okay? No, but good questions. Yeah, you know, I don't want to have to give you all full-size plans, but that's fine. Happy to clarify. So with that said, going through our development standards, this is also a rural 70 single-family residential zoning district where lot coverage is 13% maximum, and this development is 9.65%. Disturbance area, and anything that's proposed on the property that disturbs the lot, the maximum is 39%. This development proposes 23.26%. Probably a little more challenging because of the steepness, the need for walls and to terrace walls, and so you see a little bit more disturbance on this property. The setbacks similarly do comply, including the retaining walls. Including retaining walls, although I would say closer to the home, not necessarily the ones related to the driveway. 60 feet front and rear, 30 feet on the sides again. And once again, this home, as I mentioned, was constricted or were held to a defined building envelope. The cumulative height is 39 feet 6 inches. It was incorrect in your reports. I do apologize for that. With a 40-foot maximum allowed, and again, I think the steepness is what sort of necessitated really kind of having this tight, close to the maximum of 40 feet. The main structure, there is only a home. There's a home. There is no casita, similar to the last project. It's 24 feet measured above finished grade and 24 feet above natural grade. Again, similarly, grading and drainage, the town development standards have been met. Stormwater will be directed around the building itself, and no existing drainage patterns will be changed, as well as the cut-to-fill ratio has absolutely been met. You can see there was a significant amount of cut. I believe the whole project is in cut. The home is. Utilities, again, are Carefree Water, will be servicing the property. And in this case, this goes back many years. There's a community septic system, septic fields that both Carefree Grandview Estates and Boulder Vistas do tie into. Further in the project, when they do submit for their building permit, they will coordinate again with the HOA and with Department of Environmental Services. Related to the Development Review Board aspect of aside that are specific to mountainside cases, again, we can see obviously there were some very steep slopes. There are retaining walls at the driveway and the side rear patio areas to contain slopes, which is important. There's actually, as you saw in several of the diagrams, that there is a rear retaining wall, which was really important in terms of not having even a more exaggerated cut behind the building itself. And the driveway, although in sort of the, I don't want to say it's less steep than the main property, but steep nonetheless. There is grading and terrace retaining walls as well. As you probably did see, and we can discuss this a little bit further into the public meeting, is that I'm hoping to work with the civil engineer on the project to try to get a little bit closer to our requirements for driveways, which is a 1/3 cut and 2/3, a maximum of 1/3, fill, and maximum of 2/3, or minimum of 2/3 cut. And so we can talk about that a little bit as well, but I think the intent is to try to minimize how many walls that we would need at the driveway itself. It is also similar to the last project, a Southwest Modern Architectural Approach, which has been approved by the HOA for this development as well, for this neighborhood, as well as native landscaping and revegetation. What's unique to this particular development is also a request for a wall height waiver, and that is something that the Development Review Board has purview over. The requirements in Mountainside allow for a maximum height of 7 feet for retaining walls, and it also allows for multiple terrace retaining walls as long as you meet the cumulative height. Now, in this case, just due to the steepness, there are some walls that do exceed 7 feet, and I think that these are related to, and we'll get to a diagram in a moment, related to the driveway and the driveway court into the garage area, which needs to be relatively level. And so rather than creating more disturbance for this area, sometimes it's best for you all to consider a taller wall versus terracing walls and creating more disturbance. So in this case, I think the maximum they're looking for, the maximum height of a wall would be close to 12 feet. And so this is most evident in the rear wall or the last wall as you get to the driveway area that you can see is highlighted with this arrow. I've kind of noted other walls that again exceed 7 feet for your information, but what we would condition is that no wall would be any taller than 11 3/4 feet. Similarly, in this case, with the terracing, and the terracing particularly at the driveway, you can see there's a little bit more of an extensive proposed landscape, but similarly it's native plants. They'll be looking at salvaging protected plants as well on the property, and you can see once again it's tight to the development envelope that the areas that have been disturbed were either going to be hardscape or landscaping. Here are some renderings of the property so you can see the home from different vantage points. One thing that you'll see, and probably saw in your report, we don't have any views from the west looking east, because that essentially is just a tall retaining wall because the home is built right into the mountainside. Again, a couple of vantage points. I think what's important about these is to sort of get a feel for the driveway, the walls, the landscaping associated with them. And once again, hopefully looking to see if we get closer to the requirements in the zoning ordinance, if we can minimize the amount of walls that are adjacent to the driveway. Again, this is a public meeting and the public process. One person was contacted by the applicant. As you noticed, it was a very minor comment, and we did try to reach out to a new owner, but they don't have the proper address in Maricopa County Maricopa County's information. We can't we just can't reach out to them. As I mentioned, the HOA has reviewed and approved the project, and in fact, they've also looked at the walls and what the wall materials could be adjacent to the driveway, and they've approved a stucco finish. As well as you can see the conditions are attached if you choose to approve this project. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant and his design team are here as well, who would be happy, I'm sure, to answer questions as well.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you say that the HOA approved of the taller walls? All of them?
Chairman and Mayor, Commissioner Dahlman,
Dahlman.
thank you. Yes, they did. So they approved of the project. And why they went back and talked a little bit more about the walls of the driveway was initially there was a thought to utilize stone veneer at those driveway walls, but the applicant had decided to go forward with stucco instead, and so staff asked that they be sure that the HOA was on board with that material.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question, and the colored pictures that are furnished with this, is that rendering stuff, or is that from somewhere else?
What do you mean?
Huh?
You mean these right here?
Huh? No, the colored partial, well, at the back.
In that report?
Oh, wait a second. So the architectural, Grandview Association, okay, I'm looking, is that part of this, or?
Are you looking in your report?
Oh, okay, my bad.
Okay.
It was attached from the Grandview Association Architectural Community,
Okay.
or whatever that's supposed to mean. Okay, nothing, I'm
You're all
sorry.
good? Okay. All right.
Because I'm looking at the walls in this thing here, you know, as steep as that is, it probably is gonna be okay from a visual standpoint. It's not gonna be obnoxious either, so
Okay. Okay.
from the practical standpoint, just look at the grade sloping at, wow.
Right.
Yeah, it's,
I agree with what you've put in the conditions for approval,
okay.
getting the civil engineers to take a look at this on
Okay.
staff and take a harder look at it.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions I can answer?
Stacy, can we just take a look at the walls again? Just go back.
To the
toward
one with the.
height. I just want to take another look.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
These right here?
In the couple, oh, okay, yeah, right here.
Is that the one you wanted to look
Yeah.
at? So as you can see, the way it's been designed, it's kind of got an interesting sort of, juxtaposition of horizontal to sort of vertical, kind of creating some interest as you kind of drive up the driveway. But you can see as you get to the back area, because that's really kind of where you're trying to hold the elevation to get into the garage, but then you're fighting against the steeper and the higher elevation of the slopes, yeah.
So do these retaining walls, I'll call on the right side of the driveway, do they exceed grade?
Only, not until you can see where I've shown you the heights of them in red. So until the first one that's 8 feet, which is the third wall back,
They're closer to the car?
yes. Yeah, I think there's a wall that so I think it's just screened by some of the vegetation, but correct. So that's where it starts to exceed the zoning ordinance allowance for 7 feet.
But does it exceed grade?
What do you mean by exceed grade?
From this photograph, it looks like on the other side of the wall from the parking area, that the natural grade is lower than the top of the wall.
Okay, Chairman, I think that's just the graphic. I think that's just sort of how maybe the program works. I think maybe the architect could speak to that a little bit. If you would, you just got to come up to there. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you.
My name's Ken Zell. I'm the civil engineer for the project. The height of the wall is actually about 2 feet higher than the backside grade, and that's strictly a function of the drainage, trying to route all of that water coming from back around the house. So there is a little bit of exposure on the backside, just for drainage
Oh, thank you.
purposes.
Thank you. My mistake. Mhm.
And can you talk about the cut and fill ratio on the driveway as well?
I can. We're in discussion in the sense that I believe, and I think, Ken, you might be able to answer this a little bit better than me, is that typically we like to see some profiles cut down the driveway, and it seems to appear that most of the driveway is on fill. Is that fair? As we get somewhat past sort of the beginning of the driveway, and maybe if you need a different angle, I can.
Yeah, if you can bring up the grading and drainage plan.
I
think it's the
don't think I
last.
have that. I have the landscape plan, or I have
It was part of the packet?
Oh, it's in the packet, yes.
Yep.
I just don't have it up.
Sheet it is?
It was near the back. It was fr-
Is that the number near the?
one of two. It was the conceptual grading and drainage plan.
Slope analysis? Oh, I see it.
Yeah, it was the one before it.
Yep.
Which one?
It's right before the last, very last page.
Oh.
Right.
So the challenge that we had on this is that the access road that is, the public access is dropping at a fairly good clip. So when we looked at the slope analysis and we looked at where the lesser of the steep slopes were, it was kind of on the east side of the building. So what we thought is if we looked at bringing the drive further, I'm gonna say plan south on 66th Place, but all we're doing is losing elevation. And because we are limited to 18%, the further we go down the hill to try and get more grade and length to try and mimic the slope, we're losing more grade than what we are actually solving with the driveway. So we decided we would do the switchback. The profile that's shown at the bottom is kind of misleading because that's along the center line of the drive. But as you're driving up toward the garage, the right-hand side is actually in cut, and the left-hand side is actually in fill. If we tried to mimic the grades at a 30% slope, we just don't gain anything because the longer we make the driveway going down along 66, we're losing elevation, so that fill becomes even greater. So we've looked at this probably 5 or 6 different ways. We looked at all of the options that were available, and the only thing that we can really think of is if you wanted to minimize the number of walls, they just have to get taller. So we tried to go through and put a planter kind of concept to meet the mountainside development guidelines closer than going through and just doing one sheer exposed wall. By doing the stepped retaining walls, you're creating level planters that would provide some interest and break up that massing. So even though it looks like we're adding a lot of fill, most of the drive, there's portions of the drive that are gonna be in cut. It's just we only cut one section down the center to make sure that we met the 18% slope, if that answers your question.
I think so, and the 18% slope applies to what's practical for a drive,
It's dictated by the town standards and
And rural metro, I believe.
and rural
yeah.
metro. Rural metro's not going up this driveway, but they also dictated that 18% in case their emergency responders had to climb up the driveway. So there's not a lot to do when you're dealing with 30% slope. And you're limited to 18%, you're always behind the gun.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You also know that further coordination is required with Maricopa Environmental Services for the septic tie-in as well. When will that happen?
Right, Chairman and Commissioner Smith, yeah, typically that would happen before, during the building permit process and before we would issue an approval for a permit.
Anything else?
So, Stacy, we have I guess it's a condition, right? That staff shall work with the project civil engineer if applicable proposed driveway condition that meets the intent and the needs of the staff cannot agree, the item will be brought back. Who's likely to give?
I mean, I think,
I
we'll,
mean, from an engineering point of view, you did the best you could, right?
Well, I think for one that, one of the comments that was included in the report is that, we've never seen cross-sections up the driveway to understand the magnitude of cut to fill. And I think it was actually a suggestion of the civil engineer to do so prior to the building permit process, and so, it's compromised. It's, we just have to understand if it's meeting, I guess, staff's opinion is, I just want to be sure that it's meeting the intent of the zoning ordinance. And if there's, if we're talking about possibly eliminating a wall and having some taller walls, what's the magnitude, what is that impact? So, I was trying to keep them on a schedule, so that, because I think it's something that, if you're all comfortable with the way it is, or, working through the process, we would be happy to do that.
Three different walls.
Yeah, and our intent is that we'll prove to the town, what we have. We will cut cross-sections. It would be our preference that that stipulation would just be, we'll work with the town council. We would prefer not to come back to you. If you guys would stipulate that we have 11.75 feet height in the retaining wall, and that's what we, is decided between engineering staff and planning staff, we would probably not want to come back and delay the process, because they've been in this process for quite a while. But we're willing to prove with the town engineer that this is the best solution.
Well, cross-sections do that would have helped out immensely. I can see the walls on there and can read this, so you got 1, 2, 3 walls in the driveway.
And
I can picture it coming down.
Yeah, and we've given you top of wall and finished grades on both sides, so we just think that the stepped approach was more intent with what you guys were looking for, and to soften that wall.
I just think, if I may, that, you're right, it had all the top and bottom of walls. I think having contours might have helped us in terms of the valuation, and I think if we, when you take it to construction documents, we would be looking for contours for one. This isn't a question about the 11-foot and 9-inch wall. This is more about the driveway and the 3 retaining walls. And so, I can appreciate what the civil engineer is saying, but I think it would be helpful, and we wanted to move this onto a calendar as soon as possible, to then, since they wanted some time to prepare for those cross-sections, that we were amenable to looking at those at the building permit process. I'm confident that we'll come to an agreement.
I think so.
And it's probably gonna be pretty close. As far as the centerline grades, it's pretty much gonna be what it is, because again, we're limited to 18%. We have a garage elevation. It doesn't help to sink the house any lower. It doesn't help us to lengthen the driveway. So it's 30%.
So you're not looking to have a discussion about this and provide the information so that we can understand what's.
We can, but I think that we're at a point that we're confident we can make it work. I think the architect and the homeowner is confident we can make it work. If we have a little bit of latitude on the height of the walls, we might be able to get rid of one. But
I think that's what we're trying to move towards.
okay.
Which walls are you talking about
The 3 that are on the outside
By
of
the curve of the
curb.
driveway.
We're switching topics real fast, and I'll go slow. The walls that we were talking about before, the 11-foot, 7-inch walls, were by the garage, not on the driveway.
And
Correct.
that's a different topic, right?
Okay.
Mhm.
So these walls, what's the issue are these walls higher than they should be, or just?
Not
around
currently,
level?
no.
They're not taller than they should be, but what we're trying to understand is, in
Why there's
the
so
zoning
many.
ordinance, we require no more than a third of fill under a driveway, and you can have more cut.
Walls were getting more than.
So, right,
Okay,
right,
okay,
right.
thank you.
Okay.
The only other question that I have for you, Stacy, is that on the conditions or anywhere else, we don't have the exception to the 7-foot high walls by the parking area. Do we need to?
I'm not sure I'm following your
Well, on page 5 of the packet, it says the retaining walls adjacent to the garage exceed the allowable height of 7 feet, see diagram 4. And then I'm looking at the conditions, which are on page 10 of 10, and we're not granting any variance or whatever we would, the language is, to allow, or do we need to, or I'm lost. You have retaining walls in the parking area that are 11 feet, which are 4 feet plus greater than the maximum height. Do we have to somehow say we're approving that?
Yes, although, thank you for pointing this out. What I would say is that the retaining walls should be designed consistent with the plans. So the plans that we're talking about, I think we're in agreement.
Okay.
What I would correct, since I understand better and the explanation relating to the top of retaining walls being 2 feet greater versus 6 inches greater, I would strike that extension of the 6 inches.
Now I'm lost.
I thought we were talking about condition number 5?
Well,
Yeah.
okay, condition number 5 says, yes, the retaining walls have to be congruent with the plans that are there. But the plans are in excess of what the maximum that's allowed. Do we have to grant some kind of something to allow
The
them
way-
to be higher?
Right.
Or just say that by approving these plans, we by implication are approving?
I would say the latter.
Okay.
Again, with the exception of I would strike the 6 inches above. Again, I'm looking at specifically condition 5. I mean, you kind of, you did a summary. The second to last sentence.
Second? Are we on the right?
On number 5?
There's only one sentence.
We don't have 6 inches on there.
Oh, I'm on the wrong report. Sorry. Maybe I don't have that on. If it's not on there, my mistake then. I'm looking at the wrong report. Let's see.
I think given that probably difference anyhow, given the slope of it so much, whether it's 3 feet or 6 inches back there will
Right,
make any difference.
I just want to know what we're doing.
Right, our retaining walls and our site walls to be designed consistent with the plans, yes. So, I apologize, I was looking at the wrong report.
Okay.
So, it's just,
So by us approving these conditions, we by implication are approving an exception to
Yes.
the 7-foot wall. Okay,
exactly.
thank you.
Thank you, sorry about that.
When you look at it from a visual standpoint, what little bit you're gonna be able to see from the street side, and the sphere's so both sloping that you're not gonna know any difference anyway.
Right.
So,
It may be hard to see, right, and there's landscaping as well.
are there any other questions? Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? It's approved.
Beautiful home.
Beautiful home.
Welcome to Carefree. Build it quick.
Have fun.
Happy building.
You can. No, nothing but that.
Yeah, I think that adjourns us, right?
No, we're getting a presentation from Steve.
Again?
Here's Steve again, yeah.
Well, you've
It's
been
short
here
and
once or
sweet,
twice.
Tough crowd.
You know it's a tough crowd, so
I know, after all that grilling, I was just like, man.
I didn't see that, I'm sorry, Steve.
I was looking at the wrong.
We good?
Yeah,
All right, Commissioner
proceed. You have 37 and a half seconds.
Commissioner Cross,
Thank you.
Good luck.
Welcome to Carefree.
Chairman Cross and Commissioners, thanks. Just, as part of the responsibility, I just wanted to let the folks know who are new that part of the responsibility that we've assigned to the Planning and Zoning Commission is the Economic Development Advisory Board. And the Economic Development Advisory Board was originally intended to be a separate commission and committee to kind of focus on economic development activities. But so many of the activities that we were working on and from an economic development perspective were really intertwined with what decisions need to be made at a planning level, whether it was a general plan amendment or whether it's we're working on the redevelopment planning process. And so it just became, I think, a lot more efficient to be able to have the Planning and Zoning Commission and actually the leadership of the town thought the same way as well, to kind of focus on both those planning and zoning issues as well as economic development issues. And when you look at the general plan, part of the general plan and one of the elements is focusing on the sustainability and economic development responsibilities of the town to make sure that at the end of the day, for all the services that we want to provide, that we actually have the ability to pay the bills. And so with that said, it needs to be done in a way that is consistent with the types of land use policies that you're going to be responsible for implementing. And so it's really kind of this balance that we want to set forward. And so one of the things that we'll be looking to do is that all the economic development activities that we do, or for the most part, many of the economic development activities, whether it's part of the planning and the implementation of the economic development program, I'll be bringing that forward to you. And I should be bringing to the next 24-month business plan to you next meeting. We kind of reviewed it last fall, but since we have so many new board members, I think it's important that I will get it sent back out, give you a chance to kind of review it, be able to ask questions, ahead of time, and then we can come in and have a conversation about that particular plan. And then just to let you know that one of the things that we'll be doing also is when we evaluate economic development projects or programs that we're looking to be put in place, those will be brought forward to this board to be able to help make those decisions, make recommendations to council. So that way we're giving multiple layers of input on the decisions that get made from the council leadership. And so I'm very excited to be able to work with you all and just understand that the role is pretty broad and there's a lot of things to consider. And so, the best thing to do is continually challenge us as far as in being able to put information together for you that's going to help you make the best decisions for Carefree. So just want to know that's what I'm about. And if you ever have any questions about anything of the things we're working on, whether it's the redevelopment or general plans, the resort strategies we've been putting together, you can always come and talk to me directly, or send me an email or call me on the phone, either way, and try to get you as much information as I can. I can't talk to you collectively except for here. Don't want to talk to you collectively except for here. But individually, we can talk to each other and then be able to bring things back to you. So I didn't want to make it too long because I know you guys had other things to do. But I just wanted to let you know kind of where I'm going to be coming from, and you'll probably be seeing a lot of me as we look. And some of the key things that we'll be focused on from I think we just had this from council. Just approved the executive summary for the redevelopment plan. And the two things they put on there that they really want to focus on, one is the idea of having some type of overlay district from a zoning perspective for the town center, and then looking to see if there's design-specific guidelines that we can put together for the town center that focus on the commercial aspects of things, and see if there's a way we can detach that from the general residential population, which has its own design guidelines and processes that it follows through. So that's been important to the community, and it's important to the council that we address that. So those are some of the things that we'll start working together on as we move forward. And if we need to, we'll put together workshops. We've done that in the past, where we'll just sit down. There's no decision that necessarily needs to be made, but it's just to be able to talk through these issues, and we can do those in the public light. So if there's any questions.
So that's including the 10-story building you want to put up?
Yeah, all the attention. It's 20 stories now.
It's enough out of you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's up to 20 now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so that was the other thing that was brought up, was the idea of density intensity for the town center. And if you look at the redevelopment plan, the intensity is actually less than what we originally had, and what shows and was reflected in the town in the general plan itself. So it's not about intensity and density for, I know what we're trying to accomplish. It's going to be more about quality and going down that pathway, at least at this time.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
It'll be a lot of fun.
It is going to be fun.
That'll be a fun
I've, for the new people, we've enjoyed, the meetings up to on this, and I'm sure there'll be more.
Yeah. And it can get repetitive.
Yeah.
But you have to put it in the public light. Sometimes you just have to keep moving it forward inch by inch. So
But we do get to have some input, which is nice.
Steve, will you distribute a copy summary that the council adopted?
Yes, I will.
That's good.
Yeah, I'll get that out to everybody, and then we do have the final plan done, and so we just got that, and that's, needs to go up on our website, so we'll make sure that that's available to everybody.
That executive summary is in the back of your binder.
Oh, was it in there?
The redevelopment plan.
For those of us that did not get a binder, we did not get an update, I do not believe.
I know you may not have a copy,
Okay.
Yes, you already have it.
the new members
I
do.
found it.
Yes.
But yes, we'll circulate.
Mr. Chairman,
Is there anything else?
I move we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
I.
I didn't get it.
Very good.
Thank
First
you, y'all
meeting.
did a great job.
Worked all right.